taking advantage of contract blunders, only making decisions final at the very last second, or simply doing everything humanly possible to keep a huge impending moment under wraps, have all led to some of the most astonishing happenings in wrestling history. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are the 10 best kept secrets in wrestling history. Number 10, John Cena's Royal Rumble return. A return so deeply shocking and exciting, 20,000 folks briefly forgot it wasn't cool to love John Cena during the late 2000s. Wonderful stuff. After going down injured in October 2007 with a pectoral tear, most expected to not see the face that runs the place for around 6 months to a year. But this freak of nature isn't your average human being, folks. About a month before his sensational comeback inside of Madison Square Garden during the 2008 Royal Rumble, folks within the company were already aware one of the most unlikeliest of comebacks was on, according to Bruce Pritchard on his Something to Wrestle pod. And then when the time came to execute this monumental surprise at the pay-per-view, Cena was hidden all day, and even marched through the hallway covered when the time came to finally blow the roof off of MSG. All that effort to keep this Rumble return under wraps paid off and then some in the end though. Number 9, Malachi Black is suddenly all elite. It may not have led to the sort of consistently mesmerizing run folks were hoping for, but Malachi Black's first night as an all-elite menace is still one of the most surprising and captivating Tony Khan's company has ever seen. And what made Black's arrival on the night of July 7th, 2021 so legitimately stunning was the fact not a single soul honestly thought the former NXT champion had a chance of appearing on AEW TV for at least a few more months. You see, in the wake of being released by WWE on June 2nd, most assumed Black would have to stick to the typical 90-day non-compete clause the sports entertainment company stick in their contracts. However, with Black working on the Black and Gold developmental brand for a time before being called up to the main roster, it was eventually revealed that WWE had stupidly failed to update the star's NXT 30-day non-compete clause to the usual main roster 90-day one after he hopped over to Raw and SmackDown. What came next was one of the coolest debuts in AEW history. A blackout led to the amazing reveal of the former Aleister Black secretly signing with the company, before Arn Anderson was utterly pulverized with a spinning heel kick at that year's Road Rager. Now I've got a quick question for you. What do you think's been the best ever AEW debut? Was it Malachi Black's spinning heel kick to the Arn? Or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below, baby. Number 8, Christian Cage is cleared for a Rumble comeback. Returning to the greatest multi-person match in all of wrestling now, and yet another moment nobody ever thought could actually be a possibility heading into a Royal Rumble event. Now sure, the prior year's men's over-the-top rope epic had seen the unlikely comeback of a certain rated R superstar, folks also once thought they'd never see bumping again. But rumours of Edge's impossible return becoming a reality were very much doing the rounds before the 2020 Rumble. The same could not be said for the WWE Hall of Famer's best pal though he had technically taken part in an unsanctioned fight with Randy Orton in 2020, away from that 1-minute squash, Christian hadn't been involved in a match since retiring due to concussion issues. That all changed on the night of the 2021 Men's Rumble, however, with Christian and a few others actually being made aware of the fact he'd been cleared to return a few months before the event, after them managing to keep that vital information a secret in the time leading up to the Thunderdome show. Captain Charisma was finally given the thumbs up to make a jaw-dropping comeback to action on the Friday before the PLE, and with that, the once unthinkable visual of Edge and Christian competing in a WWE match together soon unexpectedly warmed the hearts of genuinely stunned fans around the globe. Number 7, no one knew Pat McAfee was going to be calling the Rumble 2023 action. It wasn't just those watching the 2023 Royal Rumble inside of the Alamo Dome and at home that were caught entirely off guard by Pat McAfee's unannounced arrival that night. If it wasn't already clear from the way an unquestionably stunned and overjoyed Michael Cole reacted to the return of his Blue Show pal, and Corey Graves' hilarious exasperation at being nudged down the bench, it was later noted that neither man had any clue Pat was going to be back that night. The majority of WWE's production crew weren't told about the awesome McAfee secret either, with WWE's decision to keep the epic return to the booth close to the vest, kicking the event off in the most unpredictable and joyous way imaginable. Watching a legitimately giddy Cole then be told in real time that his mate would be joining the twosome for the entire night of action was a terrifically wholesome moment too, and one that wouldn't have been possible had someone let the Pat out of the bag beforehand. Number 6, Roman Reigns wrecks everybody out of nowhere. nowhere. Heading into the first crowdless SummerSlam in WWE history, the company promised the folks locked up in their homes around the world that they would never see it coming. And in what had become something of a rarity at that point, WWE actually only went and delivered a truly remarkable shock that no fan on the planet honestly foresaw in the weeks before the biggest party of the summer. The big dog hadn't been seen on WWE programming since dropping out of WrestleMania 36 and taking some time away from wrestling during those early pandemic days. And with there being very few hints at exactly what the future held for the former world champion in the months that followed the show of shows, outside of WWE eventually releasing new merch for the absent figure, most understandably assumed that aforementioned tagline was likely just referring to even more demented fiend Braun Strowman shenanigans in the main event. What they didn't expect to see was Roman Reigns not only making a shocking post-match return to all things sports entertainment, but as a badass heel who ate spooky monsters for breakfast at the head of the table. To ensure this monumental show-closing return would come as a real game-changing shock to much of the wrestling world, Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that WWE didn't even tell a bunch of Roman's fellow superstars that he was about to come back and kick off one of the most dominant runs in wrestling history either, and he's never looked back since. Cheers for watching this video today, and if you like what you see, then go and hit that subscribe button down below. Number 5, Shane O'Mac brings back the money. Long before he strutted out as one of WrestleMania 39's best kept secrets, and unfortunately limped back out again a minute or so later, Shane McMahon found himself in the middle of an even bigger shock return in 2016. It had been announced that someone was going to be handed the most prestigious award that WWE will ever present on the night of February 22nd, that being the Vincent J. McMahon Legacy of Excellence Award, of course. But just before Vince could hand the award over to the on-screen heel with a quote-unquote warm, good-hearted soul known as Stephanie McMahon, a rather familiar tune blasted through the speakers. The money was back, baby! And a crowd that had just spent much of the last few minutes groaning and watting their way through another soul-crushing start to Raw suddenly erupted in stunned euphoria. Nobody had a Shane O'Mac comeback on their 2016 WWE bingo card, that's for sure. Vince would later tell the Orlando Sentinel that the big reveal was kept a secret, thanks to Shane being locked away on a bus until the moment Stephanie's music hit that night. And when Shane-O did eventually show up in Gorilla moments before shaking things up a little, the folks sat around reportedly said they couldn't believe what was happening. They were likely saying something similar back in April, after watching Snoop Dogg drop a surreal people's elbow to cover for the destroyer of the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble's torn quad. Number 4, it's Sting in AEW. Returning to an era most folks understandably don't have the fondest memories of, AEW also managed to give their audience a much-needed shot of completely unforeseen joy during their first ever Dynamite Winter is Coming event in 2020. Now sure, folks were aware that the legendary Sting had quietly parted ways with WWE midway through the year, and it did feel like AEW was a logical destination for the icon at some point in the future. But very few predicted precisely when that debut was going to go down, and that was largely due to the likes of the Young Bucks and Tony Khan keeping Sting's incredible arrival under wraps for months. Matt and Nick Jackson would also confirm to Living the Gimmick that they used the old hide your massive surprise in a trailer trick on the day of the event. And when it was finally time for the Stinger to wander into position, the EVPs recalled watching the genuinely shocked talent inevitably mark out around him. Similar reactions were no doubt happening all over the planet when Tony Schiavone let out an iconic "It's Sting" for the first time on AEW programming, as all involved pulled off one of the finest surprise arrivals of the modern era. Number 3, Mark Henry was far from finished. After being a part of the WWE system since 1996, lifting World Championship gold and enjoying a terrific Hall of Pain run, most fans were quick to believe the once unstoppable Mark Henry was done when he began teasing retirement on Twitter in June of 2013. And right up to the moment the emotional powerhouse had his arm raised by John Cena after telling those watching on that he was retiring from the active roster, there wasn't a person out there who didn't fully believe they were watching the end of the lovable big man's in-ring career. Then, in a move that left millions of jaws banging off the floor, Henry only went and revealed the entire thing was one big swerve, nailing Cena with a world's pinkest slam in the middle of the ring. Henry would later admit down the road that he was actually considering retiring around this time, but after Vince McMahon talked him out of it, the committed star then spent months tricking folks into believing the end was near. And after successfully keeping the real plan to have him actually attack Cena and set up a match for Money in the Bank over the WWE Championship a secret, through his brilliant retirement teases and moving speech, Henry masterfully completed one of the greatest shock turns of all time. Number 2, Brock Lesnar beats the streak. The Undertaker's streak streak shockingly coming to a heartbreaking end at WrestleMania 30 was a call that very few outside of the key players involved had any idea was about to rock the Superdome. In fact, it was reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter around the time that referee Chad Patton was actually told Taker would be walking out of New Orleans with a 22-0 record. But with the rule being for WWE officials to ref the contest as a shoot, Patton simply brought his hand down for the incredible 3. It would also later be revealed by Taker himself in an interview with Ariel Helwani that the original plan up until the day of the show was actually for the dead man to go over the beast on the grandest stage. But early that afternoon, Vince made his way into the Phenom's dressing room and secretly changed wrestling history forever, altering the old finish to the one that ultimately involved the concussed icon being F5 to smithereens for the Brock win. And just a few hours later, the entire wrestling world was left feeling utterly shook by a first ever Taker Mania L that came completely out of left field. And number 1, CM Punk comes back home to WWE. It still feels rather surreal to be living in a world where this chip magnet is once again strutting around Monday Night Raw with a potential pipe bomb in his back pocket. But after arguably the best kept wrestling secret of all time, well, here we are. After months of speculation and many a report debunking the idea of CM Punk making a shocking return to WWE, the unthinkable became a deafening reality inside of the All-State Arena in 2023. This wasn't a case of simply lying about what was on the horizon for months though. It was reported that WWE and Punk only made a deal together around 10 days or so before Survivor Series, with the wise decision then being made to keep the whole thing a secret heading into the War Games show. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer even noted how certain TKO group executives were not told about the incoming Best in the World, with the folks in the War Games main events being among the few who actually knew Punk was in the building, and this genuinely shocking return being kept from almost everyone. All this secrecy resulted in a noise unlike anything you're ever likely to hear again, as the Punkers shocked the world one more time in Chicago. Did you enjoy this best kept secrets in wrestling history list today? If so, then check out this 10 secret conversations that changed wrestling history forever video too then. It is Ace, bye bye!